So as Laura said, my name is Jed Taylor. I run the Technology Entrepreneur Center on campus in the College of Engineering, for those that don't know me, and then I work out with Laura here down the research park as one of the entrepreneurs in residence. And so I'll tell you a couple of things. I apologize for my slides here. Laura just referred to this as the saddest slide that she's ever seen, how boring my slides are. So, but it's what we did is we've got a 3-workshop series on SBIRs. And this is the first one, so this is our SBIR 101. And then we've got another one that we'll do in a couple of weeks where we've got one of our program directors at the NSF that we do a lot of work with, Jesus Soriano. He'll Skype in for an hour and give you kind of an overview of the NSF SBIR program. And then he'll drop off after an hour and I'll talk a little bit about commercialization plans. And then we'll do one a couple of weeks later where Roland will talk a little bit about technical plans and budgets. So the idea behind this is we want to lay out a 3-workshop series where if you know nothing about SBIRs or you never put one together, you'll have an opportunity, you'll kind of have the skills or the resources necessary to put a solid SBIR together. And a little bit about my background. I did an SBIR funded company. I had no idea what SBIRs were about 10 years ago. Yeah, it was about exactly 10 years ago. It was the summer of 2007. And then I joined a startup here out of Research Park, and we were SBIR funded through the National Science Foundation. We did pretty much every SBIR opportunity the NSF gave us. It kind of kept us through the. I love the program because it kept us through the rough 2007, 2008 time period. It kept us funded, kept us in business, and then we got very close to that program, and then we were acquired by VMware a couple of years ago. And then have stayed very engaged with the NSF since then and been a participant in most of their tech commercialization programs. And then I regularly review for the NSF. I sit on several of their SBIR panels every year. I'll be on one in a couple of weeks. And so I'm very familiar with their program and like how they review in the process. Oh, and I'll say when I do the workshop in a couple of weeks, and you can see the dates. They're out there on that poster, right, Laura?
It's October 27th.
It's a Friday, right? Yeah, it's on a Friday, because that's when Jesus can participate. When I do that panel on Friday in a couple of weeks, I'll actually spend some time talking about what a review panel for the SBIR program looks like, which I find to be very helpful. Kind of gives you an idea as you're putting your panel together, or your proposal together. So I'll spend some time talking about that. So before I go on, so I covered this part, my background. So before I go on, let me ask you, is there anything, now I want to go around the room and kind of hear everybody introduce themselves and talk, just say a sentence too about your background, or what your interest is. But is there anything you want me to cover today? Anything specific? Any questions you have before I start? There's going to be a reason why you're here.
What does the acronym SBIR stand for? Small Business
Innovative Research.
Innovative Research.
Yeah, good question. Anything else? That was an easy one. That's a softball question. What else? What else do you want me to make sure I cover? Yeah?
What can SBIR funds be used for?
Okay, that's great. I'll briefly make sure I talk about that. Roland will cover a lot. He'll spend a lot more time on the budget in 3 weeks, but I'll make sure I at a high level to address that today. Reza.
Is it true that NSF SBIRs are so hard that it's not worth writing and we should just focus on POE SBIRs?
That they're so hard to write that you shouldn't focus on it?
No, so hard to get.
So hard to get. Absolutely not true. I'll answer that right now. I think everybody should apply for them because they're so easy to get.
I'm talking about NSF.
NSF ones. No. I think NSF is the easiest to get. Absolutely. So that's a good question. So the question is, what is the success rate? So the typical success rate is about 13%. But I'll tell you that the feedback I've heard sitting on the review panel is most of them that you see are not very well written or not very good. So if you go through an I-Core program, which is, are you familiar with I-Core? Have you heard the term I-Core? It's a program that we run here. It's an NSF program that helps you explore the potential of your program. Teams that go through there, the success rate is about 67%. Okay, and I would say most of the proposals you see are very bad. So if you write a good one, your success rate is much higher. Self-explanatory, right? Write a good proposal, you have a better chance. But I'll also say that in the state of Illinois, that We're less than 1% of the population here in Champaign. 32% of the SBIR dollars that went to the state of Illinois came to this building that you're sitting in. So we have a lot of resources to help you get an SBIR. Yeah, Allison.
So like SBIR is great, and we're so excited to be in it, and we really endorse the resources that they're speaking about, because they're very using it. It was very helpful and instrumental, because it's just something that I do a lot of writing. It's not something you naturally know how to do, so I highly recommend engaging in any of these things that they're speaking about. The other question I had was, it was suggested when we were going through some of this that, why don't you go for R1 or research funding too? And that's not something that I really naturally know how to do. And I didn't realize you didn't have to be a university to go for R1 funding. Is there ever going to be a workshop on that, for people? Because I think that's another pathway of dollars, and it can help you get data to support submitting an SBIR.
It's a good
So
question.
it just kind of seems like the cart before the horse a little bit for some of the things for more sophisticated tech or unproven novel tech.
It's a good question. I'm not sure if we're going to have one here. Like, I'm not going to put one of those on. It's not my area of expertise. I think they have some of those on campus, because usually that's a whole different area of NSF that puts those on. The area that we tend to focus on here is the IIP. I don't even remember what IIP stands for, but it's the Partners in Innovation part of NSF that funds commercializing technology. So they don't do the R1 research grants. So it's a good question, but we can talk about that later. Anything else? Yeah.
Is the workshop focused on NSF or also NIH?
The NSF is the primary focus. So, are you asking if you're interested in commercializing medical device related? So let me tell you that a lot of the principles here are related to any NSF or any SBIR that you're going after. Primarily, my expertise is at NSF. Let me tell you, NSF will fund anything. Okay? So we've got a lot of teams here that apply for NIH and NSF. Okay? You can apply for multiple ones, and I'll tell you that NSF is the easiest one to get, the easiest funding one to get in my opinion. So, but the techniques here work for pretty much all of them. Because all of the different agencies have their different requirements, whether you're going after DOD or Army. I just helped a team get a NASA one the other day, and they're very similar, but they have a little bit different nuances, each one of them. So, okay. So let me tell you a couple of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step through some slides I have at SBIR 101, and then we'll go from there, and I'll show you a couple of examples. So I pulled this slide out right here. This was very timely when I put this together 6 months ago. And it's the purpose of this workshop, setting your company up with zero dilution part one. I took this from a screenshot from a website 6 months ago. Thousand Eye was a company that was in the news 6 months ago because they went through the SBIR program for National Science Foundation, and they sold for hundreds of millions of dollars like 6 months ago. And they were all over. There was an article, and I forget the title of the article. It was that was in the news. It was something like America's best kept secret: how to raise money without like zero. It actually was seeding your company with zero dilution. That's why I put it in there. And it was part one, and then the founder of the company wrote the article, and he was like, nobody knows about this secret program about how you can get money without giving up any equity. And I was reading, it was like, that sounds an awful lot like the SBIR program. And then you read it and it was like, yeah, it's the NSF SBIR program. And there was a part two to it as well. I sent it to the SBIR, I sent it to Jesus Soriano, and they were laughing. They're like, yeah, it's great. They all knew about the company, and everybody in NSF was talking about it. But we've had several of our successes here as well. And then, but that's what we try to accomplish is more of those type of companies. So with that, let me step through a couple of slides here, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I'm going to give you an overview here. And I pulled out the slide deck from Jesus that he gave last time he spoke here, and I'm going to just go through these quickly because Jesus is going to probably use a very similar slide deck when he talks here in a week or in a few weeks. But the reason I'm going to cover them a little bit is because there's probably going to be some of you here that aren't able to make it. So. Let me just, by the show of hands, how many people here are not familiar at all with SBIR? Okay, great. So the idea behind it is they're trying to fund high-risk technologies that perhaps aren't going to get funded some other way. And a couple of key things behind it is that you can be high risk, and that's a good thing. And they want to be the first money into the companies. And I think one thing that's really interesting is if you go to the NSF's website now, they just redid their website just a few months ago, and they changed the whole theme of their website. They actually call it America's Seed Fund. And that's the whole theme of their website, which is a really good way to think about it. And they fund roughly 400 companies each year. And they fund from all different types of technology. So, and if you look at the different agencies, if you look at like NIH or DOD, they fund very specific things. They'll put out very specific calls. So for instance, one company I just worked with, I mentioned I just helped a company for NASA. NASA had a very specific call for a very specific type of technology for tracking or fixing a very specific type of bug, computer bug. That's how the different other agencies work. NSF, they'll fund anything. Any type of technology NSF will fund. They have 5 or 6 very broad buckets that your technology will fit into. But even if you can't find how it fits in, you just submit it. And they'll triage it and make sure it fits into the right bucket. But if you've got some type of STEM technology, you can apply to the NSF. One of the other differences with the NSF is that their program directors are full-time focused on SBIR. It's not just a part-time of their job, it's focused on everything. As I mentioned before, they're focused on things that have high impact on society. So they're also looking for things that may have an impact for the greater good that they may not be able to get funding elsewhere. And another great thing about the funding from NSF is that it's grants. It's not a contract. It's not like you bill by the hour. They just give you the money. So for a phase 1, they just give you $225,000 for it. You do have to submit a budget, but they just give it to you. And when you're done, you're not providing them a product. They're not your customer. Okay? And they're focused on. There's a bullet point down here that they're focused on commercialization. So at the NSF, they want to make sure that you're trying to become a successful business. So if you provide, so to think about it, if you look at their commercialization plan, or if you look at the proposal, 50% of your proposal needs to be a commercialization plan. Okay? And as you're sitting on a panel, 50% of the people on the panel are reviewing it for its commercial merit. Okay? So you got to think about that as you're trying to think about how you're going to make your proposal. You need to make sure that you're putting a lot of effort into how you're going to actually get it to market.
Yeah, so here's a disconnect. When I read it, phase 1 proposals are supposedly you don't need to provide commercialization.
No, I'm not. Why
Phase 2 is supposedly that you are supposed to go and improve the commercialization.
You're good. Okay, let's think about what a phase 1 is. Phase 1 is a feasibility study, right? So phase 1 of an SBIR for NSF at least is a feasibility study, and for an NSF one, 50% of that is a commercialization plan. Okay, where you talk about here's how big we think the market is, here's the go-to-market strategy. That's all included in a phase 1 of an NSF proposal.
So you should do the market study for phase 1 as well.
Oh, if you look at the solicitation, it tells you what needs to go into it, and 50% of it it's a 15-page proposal. 50% of it is a commercialization plan. Yeah, absolutely. And it's different by agencies. So NSF or the NIH ones and the other ones are smaller percentage of it is commercialization plan. But an NSF one, 50% of it is commercialization. Absolutely. And it's weighted just the same. It's not more weighted on technology, more weighted on commercialization plans. It's 50-50. Okay? So briefly, to give you an overview of what, for those who aren't familiar with it, for the NSF one, you've got a phase 1, that's a feasibility study, it's $225,000, and it's laid out for 6 to 12 months. And the reason why they say it's 6 to 12 months is because it typically takes about 6 months to get your money. So if you apply for December, if you're awarded the money, if you're awarded the grant, you won't see money in your bank account until about July. Okay? So the idea is if it's 6 to 12 months, you can actually apply for a phase 2 after 6 months. So if you're awarded, you get the money for the phase 2 at the end of 12 months, so there's no gap in your funding. Okay? So phase one is $225,000, phase two is $750,000. And then I'll mention briefly that there's a matching phase 2B, where if you're in a phase 2, you can apply for a phase 2B if you get some external funding, where they'll match 50% of your external funding. So long story short, if you end up getting, there's some other smaller grants in the middle. Once you're in the system, you can apply for some smaller ones. Long story short, you can get about $1.5 million as you go through the process, okay, once you're in. You asked about acceptance rate. Acceptance rate, they tell you about 12 to 13% for a phase one. I would say it's higher than that. We see much higher than that numbers here. Once you're into a phase one, acceptance rate on a phase two is about 40 to 50%. And I'd say we typically see much higher than that as well here.
So, Jed,
Yeah.
what else about the overhead? There are any overhead through the university?
You're asking if there's overhead included in the
Yeah.
grant. You want to address that, Roland?
Short answer, yes. The government doesn't want you to lose money, NSF doesn't want you to lose money. They realize that you've got general and administrative expenses for every direct dollar that you spend, and they're willing to reimburse you for that. And they've got mechanisms to do that.
Yeah, very simple. The budgets are very simple usually. Yeah, especially on a phase one.
Jed, can you
Yeah.
make the question different? Does it cover university overhead and it's not a grant to the university?
Is that what you were asking, Manfred?
No, yes, but also the university, there is also, the university needs some
So,
overhead.
okay, so let's make sure we address it clearly on that question. So Roland's addressing that yes, you can include overhead in your grant. Let me make sure that we're clear, because I think Harley brought up a good point. That these grants for SBIRs go to companies. Okay, they don't go to the university, they go to a company. Okay? So when you're applying to an SBIR, you set up a company and the money all goes to a company. Now you can do subcontracts with the university, or it's possible you can set up, there's a different form of the SBIR called an STTR, where the university can be a certain part of the grant. Okay? But there's a certain percentage that has to be. Okay? But the whole grant goes to, an SBIR, the whole grant goes to the university unless you put them as a subcontractor. Okay? Yes?
Is there still direct phase two?
No, there is not for the NSF. For the NSF, it's you have to go through phase one and then phase two. For NIH, you can go direct to phase two in certain instances. We've had companies do that. And if you want to do that, talk to me afterwards. I can connect you with the company that did the fast track direct to phase two.
So for NSF, if you have already passed phase one, then you still have to apply for phase one again.
No, hold on. If you've done a phase one, and for NSF, if you've done a phase one, you go to phase two.
No, I mean, not officially have done it for NSF.
That's right. You still have to do a phase one if you're applying
Even if you
NSF.
have,
Yes, that's right. That's right. They've talked about changing that though. Like so let me make sure I understand. You're asking if you've done like a phase one at NIH.
no, I'm anywhere. So if you already have a prototype,
Yes.
so you don't need to do the research on
You still have to start from NSF. You have to start from phase
phase
one.
one.
Yeah, that's right. Just makes it easier. Easier to write the grant. Okay, so let's talk about briefly what the type of stuff, the types of things that NSF typically funds. And the reason, I'll tell you the reason why we do a lot of NSF stuff is we have a really nice NSF pipeline here using they've got a really good tech commercialization pipeline. They've got the I-Core program, they have supplemental grants like the AIR-TT grant for proof of concept funding. They have the I-Core local site program, the I-Core national program, and then after they go through here, they have some follow-on funding as well. So that's why we talk a lot about the NSF stuff. So here's some really interesting data points they have now. And I was recently talking to someone right before I came over here, like an hour ago, that recently served on a panel, and they said they came across a company that had since the 1980s, had 70-something SBIRs. A company was basically an SBIR mill. They were applying for a new one, and the NSF program director was like, nah, we're not going to fund that company. Like, they're just like, that's just an SBIR mill. So things are changing. They typically now fund first-time SBIR companies and small companies with like 1 or 2 employees. Okay? So look at these stats right here. So who and what we fund, this is very telling. Most of the, these are from 2014, most of the companies they funded were less than 5 years old, and most of the companies they funded had less than 10 employees, and 80% of the companies had not received a prior phase 2 award. I mean, that's phenomenal. I mean, they're looking to fund first-time entrepreneurs. And the other interesting thing, and I don't think it's not on here, but I can tell it anecdotally, I've heard them tell it many times, that some of their most successfully funded SBIR companies are like first-time entrepreneurs. And actually, one of the program directors I served on his panel said his most successful SBIR funded company, the PI was an undergrad without a PhD. So they're very open to fund not your traditional company you think of from the NSF.
What do you mean by most successful in terms of the app?
Commercial and like commercial success.
Okay.
Yeah, good question. So here's a couple of things that are really interesting to think about too. They don't fund basic research. They don't fund things that are not lacking technical risk or innovation. So I always tell this example here. There's a company I'm very familiar with. It's actually at this building that had some technology that I thought, and I actually still think is one of our really solid companies right now. And they're in business. I mean, it's a company here that's still in this building. They had some technology we really thought highly of. It's one of our top faculty members in the College of Engineering. Had a great team in place. Had really great technology. And they proposed 2 things in their phase 1. Okay, so they said, we've got this technology, we've got 2 paths to commercialization that we could do. We could go this way and we could go this way. And we're gonna propose both of them. Okay, because they said, we think this is the way, but if it doesn't work, we're gonna do this as well. Okay, because it'll reduce our risk. They were rejected in their phase 1. And the feedback was, if you would have chosen one of those, we'd have funded. That they said, it's not, and they just said, if you would have chosen the risky way, we'd have funded it. And so their feedback was, pick a path and then go for it. And so then they had 6 months to redo it, and they just chose one way, and they were funded. But the feedback was like, we're not a venture capitalist, like you don't have to reduce your risk, like pick one way and just go after it. So I always think about that when I'm talking to teams. They also don't fund incremental improvements. Like you can't say we already have an existing technology and we're just going to add this little widget on the side of it. We're going to improve it a little bit. They won't fund just engineering work, right? You can't just say, just give me some money so I can do some engineering. Like they don't fund that stuff as well. They're really looking for high impact stuff that moves the needle. And if you got any questions about that, come in a couple of weeks when Jesus is here. Jesus is really good about talking more about that, talking about what they're looking for on his side. I already talked about this a little bit. I talked about what's different about NSF. NSF's not the customer when it's all said and done, whereas like if you do the DoD or NIH, like they typically are the customer when it's all said and done. They've got great program directors that are focused on commercialization. They'll fund anything that's technology based. Riz?
If you could go back to the previous slide for a second. So what does the SBIR fund? I mean, if it's not funding engineering work, and if it's not funding marketing work, and if it's not funding...
They're looking for research, right? So in phase 1, it's small business, think about the title, small business innovative research, okay? So it's a lot about how you word your grant, okay? So is what you do is you want to, is what I'll do is like, let's say you need to build something, like you really do need to build engineering work, like you need some engineering work done. You'll want to phrase it in terms of a question, right? This is what we think we need to explore, and we need to scale it up. And so you just phrase it in some type of research question and put that in your project. You can't just say, I've got this prototype and now I need to take it from here to here, and all I need is this engineering work done, and that's what I wanted to fund.
So do they assume that if you're at the point that you have a prototype, you just need to engineer further, that's a phase 2 sort of thing? Is it the case?
Yeah, that's what they think. Like you need to have something more than that.
So you basically need to apply to
in that situation.
Before you have a prototype.
Here's what I would say. Here's what I assume. Okay, I assume if you're at the university, even if you're not at the university like you, okay, but if you're at the university, your stuff is not production quality. Regardless of how much you think your stuff is in production quality, it is not production quality. So you don't want to write your proposal and make it sound like it's in production quality. You want to make sure that it's a lab prototype, stuff like that. You just need to make sure that you don't write it and talk like your stuff is like already built, and you just need to make it a little bit better. Because my experience has been, we tend to talk about our stuff like it's great and it's just ready to go. We've already eliminated all the risk, and I just need some money to make it a little bit better. When in reality, if you took your stuff out and you put it in the market, you'd find out that it's got all kinds of problems. That's been my experience.
So then you want to show that you do have some sort of a prototype, that prototype.
Lab prototype, but there's all kinds of risks still involved in it, right? Because they right here, they fund risky things. If there's no technical risk, why would they fund it? But we tend to like to talk about our things, that there's no risk involved. So just make sure you don't write it like it's got risk.
So going back to the example that you just mentioned, like there are two parts for them commercially, right? So isn't that a market risk rather than a technical risk? Because they're not sure which market they fit into, right?
It could. I mean, that specific example, I don't remember if there was the go-to-market strategy or the technical risk, but it could, either one. The point was they didn't choose one way to go. They presented both of them, and the feedback was that you're saying there's no risk involved, and that's not what we fund.
So the technical risk is nothing but like we're not sure how the product will turn out to be. Is that correct?
So if it's something where you've already eliminated the technical risk, because you say like we already have this product, we've already tested, there's no technical risk, it works, it's functioning, and we just need to do X, Y, Z to bring it to market. They're not interested in that. Yeah. And I would argue nearly everything at the university has a lot of risk involved. Yeah.
Is this funding mostly, so there's like information-based products where you get, say, an algorithm or something. Does this fund mostly hardware-based products? So,
They fund everything,
okay.
like software-based. I did a software company with them. I've seen nearly everything from there. I mean, nearly every bit of technology-based thing I've sat on a panel for.
Okay.
There's service companies, service-based things are a little bit trickier, but nearly everything else I've seen. Absolutely. Yeah.
So in terms of evaluating risk, does the panel look for evidence that, you know, in the literature that this is going to work, or does it get to that level, or is it something more like, yeah, this looks good, or?
So very good question. Okay, when you're sitting on a panel, there's typically 6 reviewers, and 3 are technical, 3 are commercial. And if for something like that, so what they'll do is if you've got an innovation, and they'll try and group them together with similar innovations, and they'll try to have technical reviewers that are fit in that area. And the technical reviewers usually do a good job of doing their due diligence, and they'll dig into it. And so they will look at literature, they'll bring their background into it, and they will. I mean, they'll come in and bring their own experience. And so, and I always tell people when they're writing their review or writing their proposal, make sure you write it in a way that everybody can understand it, but you'll have people really dig into it. And then Roland can talk about this more when he does, and I don't know if Roland will address it, but I always tell people too, when you're writing it, make sure that you write things in a way that aren't, inflammatory is not the right word, but write things where you don't make claims like it always does this, or bold claims, because you might have somebody that's in your same area at another university that doesn't believe the same way you do, and then immediately reads that as a bold claim and goes, that's not true. Right. Just discredit your own. Yeah.
This may be a dumb question, but is it good, bad, left, or right to have a provisional patent filed on anything before you walk in?
No, that's a very good question. And a part of and we'll probably touch on that during the technical, when Roland talks a little bit about the technical. I can't remember if we addressed that in the technical or commercial plan. But there is a part of the proposal that talks about your intellectual property. And I think it's an important part of it. Because if you just say, you know, it's open source, you've got it tough, that's a hurdle you have to overcome. And you don't have to have, if I'm a reviewer and somebody doesn't have patents, it doesn't mean you're throwing your proposal like, oh, they don't have any IP done. But you have to have a strategy for IP, okay? And if you have provisional patents, that's a good thing. It's a good thing. But if you don't have provisional patents, you at least have to have a strategy for how you're handling IP. Okay? You can't just gloss over and say, you know, we don't have a strategy.
How deep do you need to disclose the information provisionally? Because they're not public.
It's not deep. No, you just have to say, here we have these provisional patents, and this is what we're filing. And usually an IP section's about this big in an NSF proposal. And some are longer, some are shorter, but you should have a couple of paragraphs and disclose, who you're working with, and then you have a strategy. That's what you look for. So, it's a very good question. So, this is just showing us that NSF funds more early stage companies. I'll talk, let me just talk about how to apply. And then I'll talk to you a little bit about roadmap and what I would go from here. So the key things here is they fund risky companies. Okay, NSF specifically funds risky companies. They're looking for first-time entrepreneurs is a good thing. They're looking for, or the NSF's not your customer. Their funding is only for R&D. Okay, but there's a few ways to get around that. Like I talked about, if you word things the right way, you can get some engineering done. They will not fund business people. Okay, so they don't fund marketing, they don't fund customer research, customer discovery, things like that. But there is a part of your budget called the fee. Okay, there's a fee in your budget that you can do 7%, and you should always max that out. Like whenever you're putting your budget together, always max out the fee. And if I remember right, it's 7% of direct costs. That should always be maxed out because that 7% you can do whatever you want with. Okay, so you can use that for your business consultants or whatever, but you should max that part out. So the other thing is, I'll talk a little bit about this more when I talk about what a review panel looks like. You should always work closely with your program director. Try to get some feedback from him before you submit, him or her, because the program director is the most key part about it all. The review panel only makes recommendations to the program director, and then the program director is the one that ultimately figures out who gets funded and who doesn't. So that's something important. I'll talk about it in the commercialization workshop as well. Spend some time starting now about deciding who your letters of support are going to be. Okay, you can have 3 letters of support in phase 1, and that's a critical part of a successful one.
I'm sorry, what is a letter of support?
So you have 3 letters of support from anyone for your proposal, and it's always good to have 3 solid ones. I always recommend having somebody who's a potential customer as a letter of support, somebody that's like a technical person that gives some credibility to your technology, and then some other one. But you want to have 3 good solid ones validating what you're working on. So, and they always take longer than you think. Like, don't leave the last minute.
So when you talk about the program, is there a single program director? Because I noticed that different agencies, different departments are involved. So is there?
Good question. So it's different with the different agencies. NSF, there's several of them. There's like 6 or 7, and it depends on what area you're going to submit to. So, for instance, software in NSF is Peter Atherton. Smart Health is Jesus Soriano. And they're all on the website. If you go to the website, it'll show you which one.
So essentially you have to know which one you're targeting.
Yes, but the good thing about NSF is if you submit to the wrong place, they all sit right next to each other in the same hallway, and they'll get it to the right person. But it's easy to do at NSF. So let me tell you the roadmap. This is how, and this is not a hard, fast roadmap, but this is a suggestion that I have that I found that works pretty well. And I've written it here backwards. Okay. So the deadline this year for NSF is December 4th. Okay. So if I was going to submit a proposal on December 4th, I would say the week before, November 27th, I would set a goal to upload my documents to Fastlane. Okay. I would set that as a goal. Now, I don't know if I've ever actually been able to get all of the documents uploaded on the 27th, but that is my goal, okay? And I would absolutely get most of them uploaded on the 27th, like the data management plan, the facilities plan. Those are easy to get uploaded, because you don't want to leave everything till the last day. But we all know how it works. You'll probably end up submitting you'll probably really upload your proposal like the 4th at 3 o'clock when it's due at 5. But don't leave it till the 4th. Absolutely upload the ones that are easy ones the week before. Trust me, if you haven't dealt with Fastlane, you'll be glad to do it. Okay, on the November 13th, you want to start registering if you never have. You want to register for your DUNS number, your FINE number, your SAMs, and get a Fastlane account if you don't have all those. The reason why you want to leave yourself a couple of weeks is because some of those can take a couple of weeks. Okay, I've never seen it take a couple of weeks, but they can take a couple of weeks.
Why?
Okay, fine is your, that's your federal tax ID.
Oh, that's the same as EIN?
Yeah, so here's the thing, is you cannot get a DUNS number, okay? And then you can't get a SAMS registration unless you have your DUNS number. So that's why you need to leave yourself a couple of weeks, is because they all stack on top of each other. And you cannot submit your proposal unless you have a DUNS number. So, trust me, you don't want to be sweating it here like 3 days before the proposal. Like, you can't go, I'm just going to upload this on December 1st, and then go like, oh, what did I need again? I needed a DUNS number. So you'll be in an all-out panic if that happens. And Fastlane is completely unforgiving. Like, if you go to submit it a minute past the deadline, you can't. It's like a computer. Like, it's like a Terminator. Like, it can't be reasoned with. It's like a minute late, it's done. Like, you're late. And I've had a team have the proposal done and submit it a minute late, and it wouldn't accept it. I had a team submit the wrong proposal, and like it was like there was no mercy. It was like, you submitted the wrong proposal. Like, no. So, and they submitted a phase 2 the wrong proposal. Like, that was $500,000 at the time. They threw away $500, like $500 million. Yeah.
Are there any limitations on the legal entity structure where it should be LLCs incorporated?
No. Now, here's one thing though. So there's no limitation, but one part of the review process is this entity set up like the right way? So, for instance, if you submitted it and you were a sole proprietor, that would not look good. Like for a phase 2, right? Like as a reviewer, they go like, this is shady looking.
But for phase 1,
But
it's fine.
for phase 1, I'm not sure I have seen a phase 1 sole proprietor, but I don't think that would be a hurdle for a phase 1, because I've been with faculty members that had sole proprietors for phase 1, but I have not seen one on a review panel. Usually you see LLCs or C corps. Okay. But a phase 2, if you were a sole proprietor, it'd be like, no way, this isn't getting funded. But there's no, I'm not aware of any.
The questions about the legislative support from your
Yes.
experience, how long?
1 page. Yeah, I mean, you see some that are 2 pages, but 1 page is usually sufficient. And I'll talk more about that in the commercialization plan one, because I spent a good chunk of time on those, because those are so important. Often is when I review them, I typically go to the support letters first and read those first, because I want to see what like some third party says. And there's a bunch of do's and don'ts that I'll cover the next time. But get started on it now, and you want really good ones. And make sure that they don't all read like you wrote them. Because we all know you're going to write your own, right? You know how it works. It's all right. Yes?
What do you mean by really good ones?
You want ones that validate what you're working on. They fit with your message of your proposal, and they offer some type of support, right? You don't want, and I'll tell you what you don't want, which you often see. You often see them as a reviewer that say like, hey, it was great when you stopped by my office yesterday, and it looks really interesting. I look forward to following you as you progress. That's like a bad one. But even then, it's better than nothing, but you see those all the time. Like when I see one like that, I just go like, I write on the bottom like nothing, like no support. And I don't like put it negative, but I look at that as not support, right? Now, when
Could you give the example of support?
yes. So where you see one where it goes, I've been working with this team for a while, and this is great stuff that it solves a problem I have that I don't have any other solution for, and as soon as they bring this to market, I can't wait to buy it. Like, that's phenomenal. Or even better, where they say, I've given them money. You know, some form of support. Okay, those are the best. Now, you don't see these very often. You see these ones all the time where it's like, hey, thanks for stopping by my office yesterday. It looks cool. Like these are down here. The ones I mentioned are way up here. Usually you're somewhere in the middle. And if you're going to end up in the middle, I'm looking for something where somebody says, this is great, and I look forward to you bringing it to market. I'm happy to help you, and I commit to help you test your product as you're developing it. Because I look at that and I go, hey, they're committing something. Like if they're not committing money, they're committed to help you test it. And then you also see them sometimes where it's somebody's like mom or dad. Like you look at them and it's like, they got the same last name, and then you like check on LinkedIn and it's like their brother or mom. That's all right. It's better than nothing. So, you see everything. I'll tell you one other, like, if you come in a couple of weeks, you'll hear me tell the same story. There was one where, this was just like a year ago or so. I'm on a panel, and it was some I'll be very vague so you can't tell. You wouldn't even, I don't even remember who the companies were. But somebody submits something, and anytime you get one from like a big store, like a big brand name, I'm like, that's pretty good, because I've had to get letters of support before, and it's hard to get signatures from like somebody that works at like a GE or a Home Depot or something like that. They usually run it through legal, and legal says no. So there was a letter that came from like I don't even remember the company, it was somebody like a Home Depot or a Lowe's or something. And it came in there, it was like from a chief innovation officer, and it's like, this is a great product, blah, 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 blah. 4 or 5 paragraphs, and it was signed, and I was like, wow, that company's great. And I was like, put down at the bottom, like, great support. And then, we're going through the panel, and then we're reviewing another company, like, a couple hours later, we're going through, and reviewing this company, and I open it up, and there's a letter of support, and it's from the same chief innovation officer in the same letter, and it was a form letter for different companies. So the 2 companies, completely from different parts of the country, had the same form letter from the same chief innovation officer. So it was like, fail, like both of those companies, like they just had form letters.
Well, I could just be the chief innovation officer.
No, that's what it was, that's what it was. The chief innovation officer, the companies didn't know, like both companies thought they had great letters. They got the same form letter from the same chief innovation officer. So,
well, that doesn't necessarily exclude it, there are just 2 of them, there are 500.
It didn't, but I was like, that's too bad for them. Like they didn't do anything wrong, but it was just bad, incredibly bad luck for those 2 companies.
Yeah.
That they ended up on the same panel.
So a black swan.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Anyways,
So, now, is this just an annual, or you said 6 months?
Twice a year, twice a
So
year.
it's just-
December, so, okay, NSF every 6 months. The other agencies, it's different. So you just have to check. So, let me go back to this. So, I would, working again backwards, I'd make sure November 13th, I'd make sure your budget's done November 13th if you're gonna submit. November 1st, I'd start requesting support letters. Be strategic, meaning that like, don't get all like 3 venture capitalist support letters, because they usually write really bad ones. Don't get 3 customers, don't get 3 from the university. Just be strategic about your support letters so they fit your overall narrative of your proposal. Make sure your rough drafts, get your rough draft by November 1st. Line up advisors, because usually, university teams are always usually pretty weak on their team. Okay, because usually it's like professor, a couple people. You usually have a lot of holes in your team, so you want to have, and they understand that. That's all right. So start asking some people to be advisors, so you kind of fill in those gaps. October, like now, start your commercialization plan draft, and also start your outline. Start drafting an outline of what your technical plan is going to be. I would have your and think of your technical plan. For a phase 1, my technical plan would be roughly 3 technical objectives, 3 or 4 technical objectives, and 3 or 4 tasks under each technical objective. That's really all your technical plan needs to be. And then just start drafting that stuff out now. Let's go here.
Question, because I never wrote the SBIR grant, and so I don't know actually about the commercialization plan. So is there any resources that we can use?
Yes.
For example, to look at what is the ideal.
Speaking of resources, there are resources available. There's a lot of resources here at the university that can help you. Roland is one of our SBIR consultants here, and then Dave Kellner. Dave Kellner still does stuff, right, Laura?
Remotely.
The reason I say that is because Dave doesn't live here anymore, but he's available remotely. And we've got excellent resources. I'll help review them when they're done as well, but I don't help write as much. And we do these workshops to help as well. There's a lot of resources here. Like I was telling you, roughly 30% of our resources, or 30% of the SBIR dollars in the state of Illinois came to this building, and it's because of our resources that we have available to help you. You don't have to do it alone. Laura?
I'm just going to say that along those lines, that one of the biggest resources are other companies here in the research park that have gotten SBIRs, who are very willing to talk to people and coach them in the peer relationships, and I'm happy to make those connections as well. And that peer learning that goes on, actually speaking to somebody who has received an SBIR, has been through the program, maybe has done a phase 2, that's invaluable information. And sometimes we'll have them come into these sessions as well, but we just have so much information to cover that we can't always do that.
All right, somebody else talk. I'm pulling something up.
Okay.
Right, while he's pulling something up, I'll just mention on the timeline, if you have a subcontractor that you're planning to use, you're a consultant,
I would move that up into like early November, late October kind of timeframe, because along with letters of support, getting all the agreements you need from subcontractors and consultants is also the long tent in the pole. Those are the two things that tend to take the longest time.
So I you have to have all those lined up as part of the application process.
Right, and they have to have a letter that you include in the application, and if it's at the University of Illinois, that letter has to be approved by the Office of Sponsored Programs, which involves the university paperwork, and they like a couple weeks of lead time once they have everything in place. So you add all those lead times together, you're looking at a good month at least. You should plan to allow to get the subcontract in place.
I was just going to add that one of the reasons why we focus on NSF, not just because we've had great success with them, but they actually help us put on these events. We have a grant that's focused on specifically on underrepresented tech entrepreneurs to help them with additional resources for SBIR grants as well as our entrepreneur in residence program. All those things are available to anybody. However, we do have some extra funds for certain groups. But I was just going to say that that's one of the reasons why we focus on NSF. We also have very close ties with them and know many of their program managers. Many of them have been here. That's also another reason why to reach out to people. You can look up online and see who has an SBIR. It's all public information.
Yeah.
And you can reach out to them that way, or we can help connect you as well. But those people can also give you a little insight on different program managers. That being said, though, I would just say we do have plenty of companies here who have gotten and received, and Roland's worked with them, Department of Defense, even Department of Education, USDA, as well as other agencies.
Okay, I'm trying to share. I pulled somebody's SBIR, one of the teams that I work closely with. And let me. For some reason, it's not. All right, I'm trying to figure out how to show it. It's showing up on this. You're sharing this one. Because I thought you would be interested in seeing what one looks like. I always find that helpful. Okay. I don't know what's going on.
Maybe extend your screen to make it so.
If you stop the presentation, it'll probably show it.
Yeah.
Okay, end slideshow. Screen sharing stuff, okay. Okay, you know what, nobody's on the remote, I'm just gonna close WebEx, leave it at end meeting. Okay, alright, there we go, okay. This is what one looks like, this is a company that I'm involved with, and this is what the typical, I mean this does not mean this is exactly, I'd say this was a little bit text heavy, then I typically put a few more pictures in it. But this is kind of what one looks like. This is the typical NSF looking proposal. Okay? I'm just stepping through it to kind of give you an idea. I think most of them typically have a few more pictures, but this is not unlike what most proposals look like. Okay? And the reason I think it's important to have an idea is because I saw a team submit, every once in a while you'll be on a panel and you'll see one submitted that looks nothing like this, and they don't do very well usually. Like you'll see one that's like double spaced and just doesn't look like an NSF proposal. Okay, so this one's a little bit text heavy, but I put a couple more pictures. But just stepping through, that's kind of the.
Does it also include budget?
So this is 15 pages. Yeah, I just pulled up the project description. I have the budget. So the budget's entered directly into Fastlane. And when it's done, it adds the cover page, it adds the table of contents, all that extra stuff, the budget, justification, all that stuff. This is just a 15-page project just description. When it's all said and done, it's about 50 pages. But you only, you're mostly concerned about the 15-page description, the budget justification, all the other stuff, just like the data management plan, which is like a sentence, and then facilities, which is just template stuff that you just grab somebody else's and throw it in. It's like EnterpriseWorks, all these resources. But the main thing is this 15-page document. So I thought that would be useful for everyone to see.
I got one more question.
Yes.
So you mentioned that there's some preference for the first-time entrepreneurs. Right?
Yes.
Is there any other preference for example, like women-owned companies, or for example, to include in the team diverse populations
Yes.
or minorities?
Okay, so I'll tell you that I believe there is, but they don't do that in the room with the reviewers. So you definitely, there's underrepresented entrepreneurs and women, and minorities, and veteran-owned, those, they check those boxes and stuff, but I think they do that outside of the room. They don't do it in the room with reviewers. Reviewers don't take that into consideration. If you have a woman or underrepresented entrepreneur that's part of the team that could possibly be the PI, I'd put them as the PI. Because they are very interested in that. But there's nothing in the panel that's ever considered. They never talk about it in the panel. But they certainly look at it. Yes?
Can you submit the same SBIR for the NIH and the NSF, or how is that viewed?
So, not for the same work. Well, you can, but if you can't be funded for both of them. Okay? You have to actually say if you submitted this to different agencies. You have to be completely transparent about it. But teams have been funded by both agencies. Like Photonicare out here was funded. They received roughly $1.5 million from NIH, and then received a phase 1 from NSF. But you can't be funded for the same work unless you want to go to jail, which nobody does. But you just fund and you do different things. You can submit the same stuff. Different research objectives, different technical objectives.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you mind going back to the roadmap slide?
I've got it. Yeah, I got it again at the end.
You say lineup advisors.
Yes. So what I mean by that is the point I was making that every team, typically every team we see come out of here has significant gaps in their team, right? It's usually faculty member or some researcher and a couple of students, and you're missing. You don't have a CEO because you don't even really have. I mean, you have a company, but you're still. It's a feasibility study right now, and you may not have any marketing help or anything like that. So you want to surround yourself with advisors, okay? And actually, as a reviewer, one of your things that you're reviewing the teams on is, do they have, if they don't have the right team in place, do they have the right support team in place to help them? So start lining those people up right now. So because a lot of teams, when you're reviewing them, you'll look and you'll see like they list all these big name people, but you look at it and you go like, yeah, they really don't have those people involved. They're just naming names. So I always think that one of the things that you can really do is really line up people that really can help you, and just get them on board so you have 2 or 3 or 4 people on there that really are helpers, right? That are advisors. I'm not suggesting you line them up and give them equity in your company or anything. You just line them up so that you have 3 or 4 people that really are advisors that are helping you.
So do they need to support actually by sending letters?
No, not necessarily. Okay. So let me say this right now for sake of time. I always get asked what do successful plans look like. I think one of the most successful things, if you ask me what's the difference between a successful plan and one that's not successful, I think one of the most, and I'm just going to assume everybody here has a strong technical plan, okay? That you're strong technically. Like if you're around the University of Illinois, you're probably all technically sound, and you're going to have a technically strong proposal. I think that one of the things that sets a team apart, or a successful proposal from one that's not, is this, and that's voice of the customer, okay? So think about a couple of things. NSF has invested hundreds of millions of dollars into their I-Core program, which is a pre-SBIR program. And if you're familiar at all with I-Core program,
You might want to give a pitch that it's starting again.
yeah, so we're going to be starting a new I-Core. Let me tell you about I-Core, and then I'll tell you, then I'll make my pitch. The I-Core program is all about validating your idea with your customers. Okay, voice of the customer, and it forces you to get out of your lab and talk to potential customers. Okay, so they've invested hundreds of millions of dollars into that program. So if they've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in that program, they must think it's important, right? And they did it to make sure that their SBIR program was more successful. So if you think about that, your proposal. So the team that's been through I-Core, it used to be when I used to review these for NSF, you would typically have a proposal that would say something along the lines of, here's what we're trying to solve, we think it's really important, it's so important, it's going to change the world, blah, 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 right? And every once in a while you'll see a proposal like that. But nowadays, when teams go through I-Core, a proposal will typically look like this. It'll say, here's this big problem we think is important. And it'll say, but don't take my word for it. And it'll have quotes from a potential customer. And then that potential customer will say, and here's the top 3 problems the industry isn't addressing for us. And they'll have 1, 2, 3. And then there'll be several quotes from other potential customers. And then you'll come in and you'll say, and here's how we're addressing those problems. Okay? So it actually has third-party validation for these problems from industry. And that's what iCore does. It actually has, the voice of the customer in the proposal, instead of you just sitting in your lab thinking that these are big problems that need to be solved. And that's the big difference that iCore does. Okay? Now, iCore, we are an iCore site and node for the NSF, and we run those programs here on campus, and we're actually signing people. We run 2 cohorts a semester. The one just wrapped up right before this meeting, the first cohort this semester. We'll be doing another one. Starts up in like 2 weeks or so. So if you're interested, go sign up. That's the local program. Then we have there's a national program that does cohorts several times a year. Andrew, you just finished one up, right? Worth it?
Definitely.
Good. You get $50,000 to go through the national program from NSF. Okay, letters of support, I briefly talked on that. Roland's going to talk about the research plan in a couple of weeks, and then I'll just end with this slide again. Next steps, I just did a reverse order here. I'd start on drafting your technical plan, start commercialization plan, line up advisors. That's how I'd start. Okay, those are all the slides. Just in time, man.
So are you a university employee?
Yes.
So is the schedule of your seminars posted online?
It's
on the Research Park website.
He's on the list now.
Good. You're on the list today.
He's with me, so you don't need to.
Because I just Googled it and I came up with the Research Park information for 2014. So I thought, well, that can't be right.
He's out that with today.
Good. So they're out there on the poster.
The calendar, our calendar is the university calendar, so when you Google it, unless it's searching the university, so basically you go to our website, click on the calendar, and that's where you find it.
So there's a difference between the research
Park
from the
website and the university calendar is a widget that we use, so that it's connected to the entire university, so that it shows up on the university events calendar.
So for instance, the SBIR information from 2014.
I don't understand what that means. This is about this. We have videos, so like you see my folks are videoing, so I don't know what you came up with, but we have videos on our website, all kinds of
Research
stuff.
Park website, and under SBIR, and it came up with information on 2014.
Yeah, we don't always we put all the events on our events calendar.
Well, I know, it seems to me that you gotta.
Thank you for your suggestion.
Are you gonna, it sounds like you're blowing me off.
No, I think that you're actually being kind of disrespectful.
No, I'm saying that if you're gonna have information, have it accurate and up to date. I mean, that's just a basic thing.
I think that if you'd like to talk to me afterwards, you're more than welcome to.
So, okay.
So just a little question about the letters of support. Regarding the source, it will be okay to do a letter of support for companies that are abroad, or they need to be USA companies?
Okay, so first of all, you can do anything you want. I would suggest, it's a good question.
That's a good question.
If your customers are abroad, you want to have letters of support from customers. So I would want to see letters of support who your customers are. If your customers are going to be from abroad, have them from abroad. But I just identify who your customers are. There's no preference. I just do it for who your customers are. Yeah. Nobody would look and go, oh, it's a letter from somebody from abroad. No, they wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that as a reviewer. I just go, that's who your customer is, and do that. Good question.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Yes?
In the third session, will you go over some more specifics of the document, like exactly what sections there will be?
So we're going to split up in 2 sections, okay? And the next one, I'm going to talk about the commercialization plan. So I will talk about sections of the commercialization plan, and then Roland will do the technical plan.
So is it like half of the main narrative?
Yeah. So if anybody's seen a plan, it's like 15 pages, and you've got like really it's like half. Half is commercialization, half is technical. And so I'll talk about the commercialization plan. We'll have Roland talk about the technical plan. yeah, we'll do that.
And I'll have, if anybody has any areas that you'd like to see covered or specific questions, kind of funnel them into Jen or to me or to Laura, and we'll make sure and work responses into the presentation. Because if you're interested, other people might be interested too. We'd like to know what you want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, we're really doing this, so the reason we put it together this way is really so like, you can start from now to December and have like a solid plan put together by the end. And it's worked well, I mean, it's really worked well in the last couple of years. So.
And the other sections too, like facilities, equipment, that type of stuff, is that straightforward?
Yeah, they're very straightforward. Like we kind of gloss over those because like you've got the. I mean, I know I'm going to forget something, but like data management plan. Depending on, I mean, it's all going to be different depending on what project you are. But data management plan, I'll just tell you as a reviewer, like nobody looks at those. In fact, NSF actually asked us reviewers like, do you even consider that? And the answer is always no. I mean, your data management plan is typically a sentence that says like all data is proprietary. And that's really what it usually is. Your facilities one, if you're going to be if you're going to be centered in EnterpriseWorks, I'll just tell you what I would do, and it's like most people I help out with here. You just go talk to somebody else, and be like, hey, what did you use? And then you just take that and tweak it a little bit. But if you're in some other building, like at Urbana or Champaign, just create another one. It's just one page, and again, nobody really factors that into this. Maybe somebody does, but I've never seen a reviewer go like, oh, let's not fund them because their facilities plan looks ridiculous. It's like, just find somebody else, like, don't waste any time on it. That's easy. And I'm trying to think what else. You've got data management plan, facilities plan. There's like a commercialization history document. They just want to make sure that you're not like some shady company that's changed your name to get funding. So it's like a one-page document that's got 3 lines on it that just shows like, have you had previous SBIR funding? There's an SBA document that you have to go print off, that when you go register under SAMS, I think one of these ones, I think it's when you register for SAMS, they print off a certificate. You just print that off, you send that.
It's a separate SBA registry, so that's yet another thing you have to.
Did I miss that?
But yeah, there's
Okay.
an SBA registry in addition to the ones that you mentioned.
And it just prints off a certificate, you attach that. I think that's about it. That's it. Those are all, like, I wouldn't worry about it. They give you a checklist of what to do. Everything's easy except the 15-page one, and it's not hard. Like if you've written proposals, they're not hard. That's why everybody should do this. Everybody should do it. Once you get into, it's easy money. It's easy.
So question about the facilities.
Yes.
For example, if you are working with the university, so can you list some university facilities?
Well, you've got to have a facility, so are you going to have a facilities use agreement in place with the university or something like that? Yeah, you can. But again, I've never read one. I shouldn't say that. That sounds awful. I guess I glanced over it as a reviewer. It's not going to make or break your proposal. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, many companies will ask us for letters of support because if they get the award, then they generally, oftentimes, not always, come into our facility. So, because as there are rules about using, university facilities as a commercial entity. So, you can't just stay in your lab to do this.
Yeah, no, you have to be outside.
You are a company, so.
Any other questions? Okay, so the next one is, when's the next one? So 27th
from 12 to 2, so the reason for the longer period for that one is because we have Jesus Soriano with us on Skype.
Yeah, and it's a Friday. You normally come on Wednesday, but Jesus did not come on Friday, or on Wednesday.
And the final one is Wednesday, November 15th, and that's 12 to 1.
Okay, great.
12 to 2 will be a brief session.
In between those, feel free if you want to, make a request to talk to Roland, talk to me, talk to Jed, talk to any of our entrepreneurs and residents. All of those things come through forms that are on the Research Park website.
Excellent. All right. Thanks.